Overnight, the global picture is being shaped by a fragile US-China thaw, renewed war risk pricing in markets, and continuing high-casualty conflict in Ukraine and the Middle East. In geopolitics, President Trump has wrapped a closely watched summit in China with President Xi. Both sides are talking up a successful visit, but there are still no confirmed trade breakthroughs. The sharpest signal is on Taiwan. Trump has publicly warned Taiwan against declaring independence and, according to the Financial Times, is now undecided on a proposed $14 billion weapons package for Taipei. That uncertainty is likely to be read across the region as a test of U.S. deterrence settings, even as Washington and Beijing signal they want more stable ties. Trump also claimed China would buy 200 Boeing planes, though confirmation from Beijing and Boeing has not been reported. On global conflict, Ukraine is mourning 24 killed in a Russian strike on apartment buildings in Kyiv, as a prisoner swap proceeds. Reporting indicates Russia's advance in eastern Ukraine has slowed, with Ukraine disrupting Russian logistics, but the aerial campaign remains intense. In the Middle East, Israel and Lebanon have agreed to extend a ceasefire, according to the U.S. State Department, despite continued exchanges of fire since the truce was announced last month. Markets are reacting to inflation and war risk concerns. The Financial Times reports global bonds have tumbled on fears of an inflation shock linked to Iran war risk, with stocks also dragged lower as traders price in higher U.S. interest rates after worse than expected data. The takeaway for Australia is that offshore rate expectations and risk sentiment remain a key driver for funding costs and equity volatility. On artificial intelligence and the technological revolution, the BBC reports a case in France where an influencer used AI to pose as a 14-year-old in an online sting that led an alleged offender to hand himself in. It's a high-profile example of AI being used in quasi-law enforcement contexts, raising fresh questions about legality, evidence handling, and the risks of vigilantism as synthetic identity tools become more accessible. Turning to Australia, politics and policy are being dominated by housing, migration, and social cohesion. SBS reports experts are questioning whether the opposition's housing and migration pitch adds up, with the central tension being whether cutting migration can materially ease housing pressure without creating labor and productivity constraints. The Guardian's political coverage continues to focus on coalition strategy and differentiation from one nation, as migration and grievance politics become more prominent in the debate. On the Australian public service and governance, ABC reports thornier questions are emerging for the Anti-Semitism Royal Commission. Jewish Australians have told the inquiry anti-Semitism is spreading into everyday life, but there are open questions about whether the Commission can deliver on the breadth of what it has promised to confront. Separately, ABC reports neo-Nazis are fundraising to challenge laws that listed them as a hate group, highlighting an ongoing legal and security contest around extremist designation regimes. In courts, The Conversation reports the federal court decision in Tickle v. Giggle has upheld transgender rights, finding discrimination against transgender woman Roxanne Tickle. The ruling is likely to have flow-on implications for service providers and compliance settings. On the economy and cost of living pressures, The Conversation warns aged care wait times are running around 12 months and that new budget funding is unlikely to shift the queue quickly, keeping pressure on service delivery and workforce capacity. Finally, locally and operationally, SBS reports 6 passengers from a hantavirus-hit cruise ship have landed in Perth and will be transferred to a quarantine facility, a reminder that biosecurity and public health protocols remain active. And nationally, ABC forecasts the most widespread May rain in a decade is set to reach all states as the first northwest cloud band of 2026 arrives, with likely implications for transport disruption and short-term agricultural conditions.